History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode, number 62, Face the Music in Bhutan during the 5th century. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else there will be spoilers ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear my chair farting?
Hello, my name is Ryan Weir, and I'm here in the HHE studio with the deadbolt to my back door. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
The deadbolt to your back door?
That's right. I provide the entry, you provide the security.
Oh, I see. That's what that was. Well, I'm happy to provide that.
And we are joined, as ever, by the defiant Druk of disaster. It's the judge himself. It's Mr. Paul Dursley.
Hello.
I'd like to be a Druk. I feel I would rather have been a Druk than a deadbolt.
Too late. Now, Peter, as a practicing Buddhist as I am, I've let go of the past.
How much practice have you had?
Plenty. And now I'm living in the present. But that means I've forgotten everything about the last episode.
Understandable.
So would you please remind me of what happened in, let's say, 60 seconds?
I can do that. Starting when?
Now!
We travelled to the mountainous Himalayas, touching down in a terrifying airport to meet the people of Bhutan. We learned that the nation values well-being over wealth, and we unveiled their written history that spans as far back to just after our given time period. We also discovered the music of Bhutan, from the man-made melodies of the Drongyen and the Donglim and the bow and arrow, to the sounds of nature, the yodeling yak, the resonant raven and the rockin' tockin'. And now here I am in the verdict, ready to face the music.
That was last week's episode done, summarised nicely. Nice one, son. Now we're over to a young Dursley, who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dursley. The lovely Paul Dursley.
Ah, yes. An episode filled with splendid facts about a fascinating country.
In a completely relevant manner.
I particularly enjoyed the way you orchestrated your way around the musical theme. But it matters not what this mere mortal has to say, because we're here for the opinion of just one man. So, Paul, did it help you find enlightenment? Or did it just push your boutons?
Oh my God, it didn't push my boutons, I can assure you.
But why don't you just set us up with just some initial thoughts? So, like, what's your first feeling about the episode?
He's lost for words because it was so good.
Oh, okay, that's one way of putting it. I think Bhutan is a very interesting country, isn't it? It's one of those countries about which we know little. And so Pete attempted to bring some of Bhutan into the spotlight.
I think the emphasis on the word attempt there is fairly relevant. But yes, I did. It was a fascinating country, and I really thoroughly enjoyed researching it. It's so its own place, I guess, because it's quite isolated and it doesn't have a lot of... When you go to Central Europe and places like that, there's a kind of bleed of culture that there's people invading and de-invading and various countries owning it. But this place has never been invaded. It's been its own place the entirety of its history.
Yeah, which I said during the episode, I'm still surprised given the countries that sit astride it.
Yeah, they're no slouches, are they? China and India are substantial lumps of land.
But that could also be because they've got a demon hidden under the ground, pinned down by temples.
Yeah, they could always release her, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Knock the temples down, up she comes.
Exactly.
The one fact I knew about Bhutan and music you didn't put in the episode.
Remind us, what was the fact?
Well, the fact was they used to have musical stamps.
How does that work? Musical stamps?
Well, the stamps were like little plastic records that could actually be played.
How does that work? How does that work? Surely they'd be huge on a parcel. Or in a letter?
Well, they don't have to be the size of a 33 1/3, do they?
I'm assuming it's a relatively short tune that you get on a stamp.
Yeah, I think they're only about 1.5 inches across. And so they were sticky on one side and you could stick them onto a letter.
And then presumably take them off the letter, stick them on your little record player, and play the sound.
Yes, because they had the hole in the middle as well, so you could actually play them. I guess you just cut them off, didn't you, and put them on, because probably it helps with a bit of stiffness behind it.
Do you know, I did not come across that in all of my research.
One was the national anthem. One was some American talking about Bhutan, and there was other traditional folk songs.
That is fantastic. Are you a record collector or a stamp collector if you've got these?
Yes, what is a record collector called?
The correct name for someone who collects vinyl records, CDs, or phonograph records is a discophile. Thank you.
But, I'm going to have to hold that against you, Pete, for not getting the one fact I did know about Bhutan.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, wait till Dursley Factor for that one. But look, Pete, tell me, you spoke during the episode about the difficulties that you faced, but just give us a little bit more background about the research that you did. So where did you get most of your information from?
So most of the information came from one very big book called The History of Bhutan, unsurprisingly, which was a very thorough book, which was very long. And I read the entire book and didn't use 99.9% of it, as is the case with these things. But it was really now I know lots of interesting things about Bhutan outside my time period. That was really the challenge. It's not so much that the history wasn't there, it was the early period wasn't there, and the focus on the kind of Buddhist aspect, the monk-written history, if you like, was a problem.
And may I ask you for your first thoughts when you discovered that there was no history recorded prior to, 600, 700? What was the first thoughts that went through your head?
Well, the premise of our show is history happened everywhere, and it's not history was necessarily documented everywhere. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to try and estimate what might be going on based on things that are definitely known. So that's what I tried to do, was take things that we knew were plausibly there at that time because of the archaeological evidence from around the area, from earlier. We knew that there were people. We knew that bows had been around for a long time. We knew that flutes had been around for a long time. So I think it was less than a matter of finding documentation about what happened in Bhutan and more about plausibly linking things that are Bhutanese today to historic practices.
And Paul, what about your thoughts on that? Are you was there
my thoughts are, I wonder how you would have done it.
Yeah. Well, I said right at the end of the episode, I thought you were going to say the horn section or something. And I think that's probably where I would have gone with it. I would have taken the string instrument of the bow and the horn of the animal and probably tried to create some sort of orchestra or something, maybe. I don't know. It's very difficult to say, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a challenge, but I know I'm prepared for a rocky verdict this week. But I have to say I was quite comfortable that I presented interesting things that were around at that time. I stand behind everything I said. Paul said just now that it's not a country that a lot of people know much about, and I also kind of went heavy on that it's quite an isolated place, it's quite difficult to visit, but it's not actually a closed nation in the sense it doesn't want people to know about it. And one of the things that the current Drupka Kunli, the king, did is he supports a thing called the Snowman Race, which is like a kind of marathon that takes place in Bhutan, but it's a 5-day race, runs from the 13th of October to the 17th of October this year. 29 athletes take place. 9 of them were from Bhutan, so they were international athletes. And this was a trail that covers, bear in mind, Himalayan, so quite hilly, 203 kilometres.
Wow.
The highest point of the trail, 17,000, nearly 18,000 feet high, which this year was won by Gawa Zangpo, who just knocked the race off in just 31 hours.
Oh, in one go?
I assume they had rests on the way. I didn't read much more detail than that. But yeah, it was the idea is to raise awareness of climate change. That's the purpose of the race. But yeah, there's people who visit. So it's not a completely closed society. So I just wanted to add that to counterpoint that I said so much of it was kind of not so open to outsiders.
I feel like you're missing a trick about telling me why it's called the Snowman Race, though, because I've got images of snowmen, unless they're wearing snowman costumes.
I think it's the fact that it's through the mountain snow that they have to run. And I suspect at the end of it, they must resemble snowmen. I
feel misled, if I'm honest. If I went all the way to Bhutan to watch a snowman race, I'd be expecting snowmen. Carrot noses.
I think it's abominable.
Hey! Talking of sports, though, Pete, I was curious about archery. We spoke only very briefly about it, and I wondered what traditional archery might have looked like. So I went and had a look at some of the bows and arrows and all that sort of stuff. And I found some interesting stuff. Okay, so in Bhutan, apparently it's considered normal to drink alcohol when playing archery. Do you fancy that, Paul? You want to go sit in the audience while you got some drunk archers twanging at you?
I think I'd rather fly it on that plane.
That plane. Yeah, that's giving me nightmares just thinking about it. The president of the Bhutan Archery Federation says traditional archery would be incomplete without alcohol because it's also a game with singing, dancing, and merrymaking.
It's just like darts, then.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, they drink ara, which is a clear or creamy homebrewed booze, and it's supposed to help calm the nerves.
Well, it's not made from yak's milk, is it?
Almost certainly, I'm sure.
It's yak's milk.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to affect the archer's accuracy, because even after a few drinks, it said that they can hit wooden targets about the size of a skateboard from 140 meters away. That's the distance of 3 Olympic swimming pools. That's quite incredible, isn't it? That's proper accuracy.
And this is something that I looked into. Obviously, I had a bit more than we talked about in the episode. But so on top of being a bit drunk, let's face it, and being much further away than you would be in an Olympic environment.
Yeah.
The other side are allowed to try and put you off, essentially. They're singing and dancing and jeering and insulting you. And basically, it's not like everyone hush while he takes his shot. It's like, you suck while you're trying to take your shot.
Wow.
Which I guess is why you need a drink to steady your nerves.
I mean, it's a foolish thing when you've got a man with a bow and arrow standing right in front and pointed at you.
They do have accidents as well. There was one MP, Bhutanese MP, who got shot through the head with an arrow in an archery competition.
A minister, like a...
Poetry competition.
An archery competition.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said poetry.
Got shot through the head by a particularly sharp verse.
I've seen some bad poetry, and honestly, if I had a bow and arrow, they might have got a twang around the head as well. But in archery, you have the archers in your team, but you also have other secret members of your team, and they're known as SIPs. And the SIPs' job is to bring bad luck to opposing players. I guess like you're saying, by sort of putting people off. But they also do it by writing the names and ages of the opposing players on a piece of paper, which is they then mix with an unclean object, which is unspecified, and then buried at a crossroad or under the mattress of a pregnant woman.
Well, that's why I've always got a pregnant woman to hand, so I can curse people by putting items under her bed. So, Paul, I have a question. What are your feelings about the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics?
No, the Copenhagen interpretation is the matrix representation, isn't it?
I don't know. But what I do know is it's related. A lot of people have considered that the beliefs of Buddhism have a sort of intersection and an overlap with the understanding of quantum physics. So the nature of reality not being essential but being dependent on the relationship between the observer and the observed is something we see in quantum physics and is a sort of tenet of certain schools of Buddhism.
That's interesting. I'm very confused and I don't know what you just said. But do carry on.
Well, I'm going to ask Paul to respond to that suggestion that there are in fact links or parallels between Buddhism and quantum physics.
I cannot really answer that as I don't know anything about Buddhism, really. It's interesting because I'm not even sure I'd class Buddhism as a religion, like sort of any of the Abrahamic religions. It's sort of more...
way of life.
Well, I was going to say a method for living rather than... It seems from what I could see, sort of certainly after going to Japan, and they have Taoism, don't they, there, which is a branch of Buddhism, I think, that, they had a bell in the temple, and I was sort of thinking, God, everyone will go and ring that bell. And of course, in the West, you can't do that. It's only the priest or somebody who could do that. But no, it's that you're encouraged to go and ring the bell and make as much noise as possible, which to me sounds fun.
It does sound fun. I want to ring a bell.
Well, let me help you out a bit on the physics and Buddhism side. Have you heard of Carlo Rovelli?
No.
He's an author of a book called 7 Brief Lessons on Physics.
Oh, yes, I know of the book. I've not read it.
Okay, so apparently he read a philosophy from a book or maybe a school, I'm not sure what it is. It's Nagarjuna. And he says, and this is a quote, one of the central ideas of this Buddhism is that objects do not not exist by themselves. They only exist because they interact with something else. And he said this really gels for him with the findings of, or some interpretations of the findings of quantum physics.
Well, is this Bishop Berkeley and the tree falling down in the woods?
Has his tree fallen down? Maybe he needs a tree surgeon. I don't know.
Well, has the tree fallen down if nobody's there to observe it falling down?
And well, that's interesting as well, because presumably that was prior to quantum physics being a thing.
Yes.
So it's not strictly an Eastern philosophy. There's a history of thought that says actually the observer is part of it's a relational experience.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fundamental philosophical tenets, as you said.
Fundamental philosophical. say that after a few drinks.
If you sort of have a view of the world or something, there's always something missing, of course, because you're in the world, but you're never in a view, are you? Because you're seeing it.
Ah, see, you are a Buddhist.
I like yak cheese food. I don't know what anyone's talking about.
Oh, the yak cheese food, although it was cheddar cheese in our case. That was pretty tasty, wasn't it?
I was expecting some Yaks milk chocolate to appear this week.
I have to say, I would have sent you the food, Paul, but it wasn't a travelling food, unfortunately. Unless you wanted some congealed cheese liquid, it wasn't really going to work.
It definitely wasn't going to work. I can tell you that now. It was tasty, though.
It was tasty and spicy.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a bit too hot for my tastes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty lively.
So, talking about yaks, I did some research on yaks. I wanted to see some pictures of yaks. The curly-haired yaks, the bald yaks, the yaks with no nuts. I went yak crazy. It was yak attack time. Anyway, so I did some research and I found a movie called Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom.
A Yak in the Classroom?
I'm sure you've both seen it.
Big fan.
Filmed in Bhutan in 2019. It's about a man who wants to be a singer in Australia, but instead he's sent to a remote village in Bhutan to teach kids. I don't quite know what happens. Hijinks. There's something about a yak. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I'm going to guess he learned some life lessons along the way.
Yeah. So it was entered into the 2021 Oscars, but was disqualified. Oh no. But the reason it was disqualified was because Bhutan hadn't organised an Academy-approved selection committee, so they resubmitted it the following year, and it got nominated for Best International Picture.
Yay! Bhutani wood? Would that be?
Bhutani wood, yeah.
Good morning, Nobu.
Good morning, Nobu.
Ya chiki kyongwanimela. Yagi achilona nalo. Anismi pendola.
Kakagawa.
Cha janya.
Cha janya.
Ngalo pembe ko nomidi najenda alosulu namzam tensun digila.
Lebi jubarama cheni lo tidengala. Lebi nanga chidechi kamiga gala.
Inteni mi machiri jakap mangpa imi. Lebe nazom chilo. Kachi majomidi. Kachi namo.
There's sort of lots of weird woody type things about Bhutan, aren't there? Bonism and that pre-epic god who used to run around.
Drupka Kunli. Big fan.
Drupka Kunli, he's gonna f*** you.
That was one of our sketches that did not make the cut.
Oh, it's better than the one at the end.
Yeah, Drupka Kunli. I was delighted to discover this man, because you always think of the Buddhists as being, well, I suppose not aesthetic. There's the sort of fat, jolly Buddha, so there's the sense that they enjoy life.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, we think of sort of austere Catholicism or Protestantism, where basically the whole thing is you cannot do this, this. You deny having a good time in this life, so you're going to have a good time in the next life, which isn't actually ever going to happen. It's a con, whereas sort of the Eastern religions, as I said, are a bit more of a, a way of life, and we might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, none of it's real anyway. So this is all an illusion.
Yes.
All I know is if I come out of my house and find an arrow stuck in it, I will be sending my partner away for the weekend.
Because you know what's going to happen?
If that Drupka shows up.
Drupka Kunli, he's gonna you.
Yeah, well, I suppose, but historically, that sort of happened quite a lot in the past, hasn't it? Again, it was sort of the Western religions that did that. You know, in ancient Greek times, the phallus, and in Roman times, the phallus was considered a good luck charm. And quite often, people used to wear them around their neck and touch it for good luck.
I mean, I touch it for good luck.
Your own or
around your neck.
Paul, you sent me a photo this week of some Bhutanese stamps that featured some phalluses. Where did you find those?
Did they also have a record on them? Was there a soundtrack that came with these?
Well, I was doing my own little investigation because I was sure that there were these stamps. So I sort of looked in stamps in Bhutan, and the article that I found had the musical stamps, but it also had these phallus stamps.
And may I quote you on your message to me?
Yes, you may.
You said to me, I hope these are self-adhesive.
Nice.
Now, I wouldn't want to lick one. Put it like that.
I just despair that I've never got a letter from Bhutan. I would love one.
They sound great, don't they?
I never open it. I have too much fun mucking about with the accoutrements of the envelope itself. Bringing this back to Bhutan, though, I would love to visit Bhutan. I know 99% of the time you fall in love with the country you research because there's always just fascinating things and interesting people. But Bhutan, I'm very keen to visit. So if the Bhutan Tourist Board could set me up with a trip, I'd be delighted, guys.
So you'd be okay on the plane?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. There's so few people. These guys do it all the time, right? There's only 10 of them or 20 of them, but they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they don't show you the side of the Himalayas that's just scattered in planes.
Just draw the blind down. No need to see all that. I'll take my chances. I'm traveling to Bhutan as soon as I'm invited and on an all expenses paid trip.
Fair enough. That's a nice plea. Are we done?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
Well, nothing great.
Okay. then let's move on. And so, talking of please, Peter, we've come to the end of the line. It's time to step into the dock and prepare to face the people's judge.
I'm ready.
You don't look ready.
I'm feeling fine.
Judge Dursley, are you ready to give your verdict?
Yes. Okay, let's do it.
Then will the defendant please rise?
Sure, this could be fine.
Your Honour, as usual, may we start proceedings by first asking for your verdict on factual content.
Well, I think generally the factual content was very good, as Pete had a good book to look at. He didn't necessarily pick out all of the facts, and he did miss the one important musical fact, which we will come back to. I will give him a C+.
Very good, C+. Okay, that's not bad. Oh, well done. Okay, well then, Your Honour, may I ask you for your verdict on entertainment value? How entertained were you?
Not as entertained as some episodes, I have to say. I think you are getting a bit lazy with some of your sketches now. Some of the songs are very good, especially the Yakety Sax one. I'll have to grant you that. I wanted a little bald-headed man to slap when it was on. Because that's actually that piece of music. Its name is Yakety Sax, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We just changed it very cleverly to Yakety Yaks.
So yeah, the songs, yes. The sketches need a little bit of work.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Your Honour, may we have a grade for entertainment value?
For entertainment factor, I shall give Peter a C-.
That's a good grade for me, Pete. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's fine.
You're really quiet on this one. This is
I know what's coming, that's why.
beads of sweat pouring down your brow. Your Honour, then may I ask for your verdict on Dursley factor?
Well, there were a number of points in this episode which were sort of hearsay, shall we say?
Hearsay.
Or assumptions, and we always know about assumptions. If they had it in this time, then they would have had this sound, or then they would have had that sound. I accept that it was a difficult subject. However, you are both experts, and Pete especially should know this.
Wait, what? Why Pete especially?
But he gets better grades than you, so I assume he's more of an expert. Well, he usually gets better grades than you.
Ooh. So may we have a grade for Dursley factor?
Yeah, I really find it difficult to give a good grade for this, as you missed out the one musical fact about Bhutan. I'm afraid I'm going to give you a D.
A straight D. Okay, right, well, those are the categories out of the way. Peter, we have reached the final verdict.
Is Pete going to pull it out of the hat this time?
Yeah, let's find out. Peter, before the judge passes his verdict, you now have an opportunity to enter a plea. If you choose to do so, please make that plea now.
Right, yeah, listen, here is the thing, right? It was music, right? And there was a time period. It wasn't the same time period, different time period. The music, there was animals. And isn't nature music? And isn't music nature? And aren't they all music in their own way? Yeah?
Well, thank you for that well-reasoned and sound argument, you utter madman. Your Honour, the defendant stands before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, I have. I've just changed my mind.
In which case, I would ask most respectfully for your ruling.
D-.
Oh, my Lord.
Initial response.
I mean, I understand where this might have come from. I was ready for a bad mark. I'm going to take it on the chin and move on to the next episode with my head held high, but my grades held low.
And just, out of personal interest, how's it feel getting a Ryan grade versus, what I got last time, which was a relatively Peter grade?
Yeah, how do you live like this, Ryan? This is awful.
Some might say I'm an expert. Okay, well, look, on that relatively predictable bombshell, that is the show for this week. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things we've talked about on this show, or just to say hello, you can do that. You can reach out to us on social media, or through our website at hhepodcast.com, or by email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
We'd love to hear from you. You never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
Yeah, and one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
If you find yourself on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, you can find us at HHE Podcast. If you subscribe or follow us there, you'll get an alert every time we post a little bit of extra content, a bit of behind the scenes, picture of us. Mostly pictures of us, to be honest, but it'll get it there if you follow us there.
That's right, and we're going to be back again very soon with our next episode, number 63, Fiction in Italy during the Renaissance. But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.
And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
Parish council in Shitterton got quite annoyed because their sign was constantly stolen. The sign with a big red line through it. That was the one that was always stolen.
Yeah, well, it's not a surprise, is it?
I wonder why. And so they, in the end, they imported a boulder, or 50-ton boulder, for which they had the word Shitterton engraved on it.
That's a commission and a half, isn't it?
Wait. Did that get stolen?
No.
Oh.
I would admire the student who's got that in his bedroom.
Time flies like an arrow, colon, or would it be a semicolon? Fruit flies like a banana.